While the Real Clear Politics average polling shows Hillary Clinton excuse me.
For 2 minutes?
While the Real Clear Politics average polling shows Hillary Clinton leading by 3.4% in a four-way race with Donald Trump, Gary Johnson and Jill Stein, Rasmussen Trump versus Hillary starts now.
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin.
Oh, that's right. Trump versus Hillary, another brick in the wall. Welcome. We're at TrumpHillary16 on Twitter. Make sure you follow us, you like us, you rate us, and you comment on iTunes, all that good stuff. I am Christian Bladt at ChristianDMZ. Before the, yesterday I wrote up what I thought was an okay joke, but it was a pretty shitty joke. So the Hillary coughing really saved what I think was a weak opening. To my left, camera right, Drexel Heard, at Drexel Heard. There he is. And yes, right here in his hand, and for those watching on YouTube, this is Stephen Helmkamp, at Stephen Helmkamp, who's actually on assignment. I don't know what that assignment is.
He's
we can
stumping for Trump.
We can ask people in the chat room what they think his assignment is.
Yes.
And Scott Moore, at SMan80. That was it? I was waiting for something.
I don't know.
And the poll man. And down on the other end of the desk, Chelsea Galicia, at Chelsea Galicia. Welcome. Trump versus Hillary, everybody.
Thank you,
Now,
thank you.
we have this song because there was a lot of talk. Now, keep in mind, it's been since last Tuesday since we did the show. So there's been a lot of talk about some of this stuff, but I feel like we need to weigh in on it. There was a lot of talk about the wall last week because... that wasn't part of the joke. I was actually legitimately clearing my throat. I think the worst thing for that bit is that I used my inhaler when I actually didn't need to use it. So now it's like, what was that worth? You know, what did I get out of that? But anyway, so they say that only Nixon could go to China. Well, now we can say only Trump can screw up going to Mexico. Imagine what he's going to do to Canada. Keep that in mind. So Trump goes to Mexico. He meets with Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto. I'm sure I nailed that pronunciation.
You did, absolutely.
Thank you for humoring me. And they pretty much play nice. It's like, oh yeah, photo up, blah, 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 politics talk. And then they get into a Twitter war, which is amazing. And it was like, everything looked good, and then all of a sudden, shit blows up on Twitter. So I was like, I felt like it was an episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. Chelsea, to start with you, your thoughts of Trump's trip south of the border?
Disastrous for Mexico and hurtful to our relationship with Mexico.
Probably doesn't help Guatemala either, by the way.
Mexicans, no, were largely pissed the F off that the invitation was even extended to him. He's the only person who's just been like a candidate that's ever been invited. Although, I mean, the invitation was open to both of them.
Right.
And he just swooped in quicker. And
what was that about? My understanding is that Nieto has pretty bad poll numbers himself.
20%.
So like anything that he can do to stir things up. So I think that maybe it's more like, does anybody remember this movie, Brewster's Millions, with Richard Pryor? He gets $30 million, and if he can spend it all in a month, he blows every dime of it, he gets $300 million. So maybe if this guy gets his rating, his poll numbers down to 0, he's going to win a big prize from, some La Raza or something.
That's about as good a theory as I've heard.
I mean, it seems better.
The other theory I heard was it had to do something with trying to boost their credit rating with Moody's, and that if we got cameras, I don't know. I didn't really understand that argument, but it was really just freaking bad. Mexicans and Mexican Americans were largely pissed off about it, and for good reason, I think. And I was just even more disappointed that in the moment when the reporter asked Trump, did you talk about who's going to pay for the wall? And I said, no, we didn't talk about that. That Peña Nieto didn't say, actually, we did. And at the beginning, I made it very clear that we're not paying for the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the only thing he could have done to redeem that faux pas in inviting him down in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, you get the sense that the only people that thought that the meeting was, one, a good idea, and two, went well, at least at that point, were Nieto and Trump. But then, Trump pretty much immediately is, they're going to pay for the wall. They just don't know it yet. That's...
And it was just so bizarre to listen to Trump say, oh, our bond and our friendship. And what? It just is unbelievable that anybody could watch that and think, oh yes, this guy, he's a good guy. I totally believe him. I trust him, and I will follow him wherever he goes. I just can't imagine. But according to the polls, that's the direction we're going in.
It does look that way, and we'll save that for poll talk a little later.
Yeah, I was like, no, not necessarily.
Well, depends on the poll, though. As always. So, Scott, what do you think about not just the trip to Mexico, but then, he basically hops back across the border, which, if he really wanted to make his point, he would go to one of those, low security areas and cross the Rio Grande himself and just been like, see, look how easy
George
it was.
Washington crossing the river.
He would have just had mud on his boots and been like, that's how easy it was. I didn't even go through immigration.
I didn't need to go on my jet.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't need to. I just walked. Yeah. So that's how much of a problem there is. Or, fake mud. He doesn't even have to actually cross. But that's
it's desert, right?
We're talking about the Rio Grande. We're talking about the Rio Grande. If he was to go through the Rio Grande.
Okay.
Yeah. I've heard of deserts. Anyway, Scott, so your thought on the trip and then also his speech afterwards.
Well, I mean, going to the speech is a whole other thing
that
we really have to dig into. But just top line, I thought, agreeing with Chelsea, I thought it was ridiculous for him to go down there on both sides because Nieto does have very low poll numbers. It's different for them. Actually, I think he's one of the lowest since Ernesto Zedillo, which is about 20 years ago for Mexico. And even though he can't run for re-election, it could affect his party, the PRI party down the road. And it was just, it was weird that he would ever invite him. It really helped Trump, I think, a little bit in optics before he did that ridiculous speech later on that night because it made him look quasi-presidential, just standing there. I mean, that's how low the bar is now, that he just has to stand there in front of some flags and everything, and he looks presidential. I think it helped him for 2 seconds, and then he went and ruined whatever he was trying to attempt to do by that horrible speech, which we can definitely dig into a little deeper because there's so much that
Drexel, what do you think he was trying to accomplish? Let's start there before we get.
You mean in Mexico or?
I'm saying I'm kind of considering them as sort of one fell swoop.
I think that there was definitely an opportunity for it to have been a successful thing for Donald Trump. I think that any candidate that sort of. A trip overseas, not even overseas, but that kind of foreign policy trip could have gone well. But I think that the president of Mexico was definitely looking for an opportunity to take a jab at Donald Trump, and I feel like in the meeting they were like, "Don't even try to cross that line," and so they didn't even let it happen. And
who said don't cross?
I'm saying I feel like behind closed doors they were like, "If you're thinking about embarrassing me out there, I will do it tenfold." I'm saying that Donald Trump said, the president, if you think about embarrassing out there,
don't use this opportunity.
Then don't try to use this opportunity to try to trip me up because it will just make you look even worse, and your poll numbers are X, Y, and Z. Because Donald Trump loves to throw out poll numbers, so that would have been, so I'm saying that would have been an opportunity for Donald Trump to use against him if that was the case. I think for Donald Trump, like Chelsea said and Scott said, I agree with him. This was not a successful trip for him because, and I say that because of what happened after, not the speech that came after in Arizona, but as the plane is flying overhead, now they're in this Twitter war, and now they're going back and forth in terms of statements. That was the most disappointing part of it all, because there could have been an opportunity for the campaign to really turn it back around and say, hey, listen, we talked about this, and they could have left it there. If he hadn't brought up the wall, obviously he needed to bring up the wall, but there would have definitely been an opportunity for him to do that, and they just didn't take it.
But it's yet another instance where, how much damage would be prevented if he just didn't have an iPhone, whatever device he uses to do all of his tweeting, and I think we talked about it last week. If you just sort of set up a fake intranet where he thinks he's tweeting and no one sees it, I think that, you would actually see better poll numbers for Trump, but they don't care about that because they're going to win so huge.
Bigly.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Thank you so much for the image.
There's the Rio Grande. Look how muddy your boots would be if we're showing that to the audience, by the way, if you crossed that river.
Speaking of the audience, can we get the chat room up?
If you don't mind, Stephen. Stephen in the booth, not Stephen Helmkamp. It's very confusing for us, probably.
Stephen, can we get the...
We're not asking Hillary, Stephen, which he'll appreciate knowing that the embodiment of Stephen Helmkamp is Hillary.
I love that.
Oh, I know. You were very excited. So, because we don't have Stephen Helmkamp on the couch of dissent, we are going to just have to dissent amongst ourselves. But before we even get to any of that, Chelsea, hold up for the audience here,
yes.
the audience on YouTube. You, much like Stephen Helmkamp, took notes.
Pages.
Detailed notes. You have pages of notes. Now, we don't want all 10 of your points, but you had some thoughts on the 10-point plan, which I thought this would be a great opportunity.
Plan.
Yeah.
All right. Well, first point was the wall. And the cost of the wall is, he says it's 8 or 12 billion, but really estimates have been up to 25 billion, and that doesn't even begin to talk about the maintenance. It's just it's a lot of money, and
he's talking about having tunnels, and it's not just a
El
wall.
Chapo.
Right.
It's a real. It's a massive investment, and I guess if people really think Mexico is going to pay for it, fine. But that's just...
clearly people do think that, by the way,
but
because he says it so much.
Let's
People are like, great.
Okay, fine. Let's just assume that we get a free wall, okay?
Great.
Mark Cuban said he would pay for it, though. Mark Cuban came out the next day and said that he would pay for the wall.
Okay, that's fine. Then I would be like willing to, all right, fine, let's do the wall if it's free, except it's not going to actually prevent the problems that he's hoping it will, especially the drug problem, and a lot of the crime that he says they bring relates to the drugs. Unless he has some part of his plan that cleans up our side of the wall here in the United States about our serious appetite for drugs, this is not going to work. He doesn't. This is really. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, please go ahead. I was going to interrupt you, so continue.
For a businessman to not understand the law of supply and demand is very shocking to me. Has anybody...
Is it very shocking to you that he doesn't understand it? Okay.
Yeah, well, no, you know what? It's very shocking that nobody else has mentioned that, or that I've seen.
Right.
Now, one thing that I was thinking as you were talking is, if they're going to put this wall up...
And I should say it's a theory, not a law,
of
because
course.
I know somebody's going to point that out, so I got to really backtrack.
There are people that do pay very close attention to everything that we all say.
Especially when a lawyer says law.
Yeah, especially Chelsea. There's people who take notes.
Like you, read them back. 10-point plan on notes.
So if they have this wall and Mexico's not going to pay for it, has anybody looked into selling signage on the wall? Like an outfield at a Major League Baseball park? So
sponsors lined up on the wall.
There are definitely sponsors who would be more than happy to put their brand on the wall. I can only think of the NRA right now. But if you can think of others, tweet us at TrumpHillary16, or if you're in the chat room right now, let us know potential sponsors who would advertise on the wall. Anyway, back to your more serious conversation.
All right. So, no, but I do appreciate the comedic relief, but although that's actually not a bad idea, I just don't want to pay for it. And I think it's not going to work. So if it's going to be an experiment, at least make it a free experiment.
And Trump would call Taco Bell right away and be like, "Don't you guys really want to pay for this?"
Oh, that's another
guarantee
good one.
that's where he'd start. But anyway, go ahead.
All right, my other favorite line was that in day 1, hour 1, he would deport the 2 million criminal aliens.
Yeah.
Okay, for the fact that he says there's 2 million, of course, that's a controversial figure.
But here's the thing, just assume that there are 2 million.
Let's just assume it's 200,000, a drop in that
Let's
bucket.
assume it's 2.
Let's assume that he is going to deport them in hour 1.
Hour one after he's sworn in, he's too busy walking down the street. That's what the president does. They're too busy in a parade. They don't have time.
There's going to be like 6 gala balls to go to.
I mean, of all the problems that we face, that is of the highest importance, highest priority, is just mind-boggling to me. And I've been looking at numbers like, why is it that people think that immigrants commit so many crimes? And you look at it and yes, the numbers are very difficult to read because this study says that this think tank says that. And so it's not really defined, although I've seen a lot of studies showing that immigrants put in about $100 billion into things like Social Security over the last 10 years and have only taken out $1 billion, and about crime that generally they are less violent and offending than native-born Americans. And so when then I've seen that Fox News a couple of times on Shanahan had this these are the top 5 crimes that immigrants are convicted of.
Number one, being foreign is the number one crime of illegal immigrants.
But I look at these, I'm like, okay, these are convictions, but we know that when it comes to, let's say, drug use and selling and all that, that it's pretty much the same across races, socioeconomic classes about the use of drugs, right? But they're more likely to get stopped, they're more likely to get arrested, and when they are arrested, they're more likely to get convicted because they have a harder time paying for a fancy lawyer. So the conviction numbers are really skewed, and
Sure.
I don't understand why more people don't realize
Well,
that.
in the chat room, by the way, let me just share this. Just Sheldon boils down. How's he going to find them?
In hour one.
But it's not realistic
Even in
anyways,
week one
I
or
mean,
month
right,
one.
it's not
He
realistic.
He
as a
says that the police
lie.
know them. The police know
Yeah.
them.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I just. This is why, as much as I dislike Hillary, I just cannot take this guy seriously to lead
But
this
what's
country.
to dislike? Look at her. Here she is. See, look how
smiling
happy Drexel is
face.
to see the smiling face.
Oh,
Here's
man.
the-
But yeah,
Okay.
it's
I
just
mean, I
not
have many
realistic.
more.
It's
Many
just
more
not
points,
realistic.
but
Well,
is
I
there-
just want to
yeah, go
touch
ahead.
on Chelsea's point, and I talk about this often just from a political standpoint. Is Democrats don't do a great enough job of pushing back information.
Right.
If Republicans say something, Democrats just let it slide or just kind of dismiss it a little bit, but they don't really back it up with numbers that are hard, that they know. They know the
facts,
numbers. They
with
know the
facts,
facts, they know the
absolutely.
numbers, and all they have to do is go out there, Tim Kaine can rebut, Joe Biden can rebut, Barack Obama can rebut, Hillary Clinton eventually can rebut, but they're not doing that. They stay very passive, and this is on any issue. They allow Republicans to run the gamut on issues.
I mean, I guess because
and
if
just
your whole
keep
goal is
saying-
to, undermine what the other guy is saying, your focus is not enough on what you are doing. But there needs to be some sort of team of people that are like, actually, that's just it's wrong.
You
And
think the
Absolutely false.
journalists would do that, but that's not what they do.
I don't know.
To
it's just-
some extent, they're obviously both running as not Trump and not Hillary. But you do need there to be something beyond that because, you still have the in the middle,
It's just-
the I hate them both, the I don't know
Right.
what I think about them both, the I love them both. I don't know who
And
that
I
is,
think
though.
the thing that the Democrats have to do is explain something that is a little counterintuitive.
Right.
Like you think a wall makes logical sense, but you have to really understand the numbers behind the studies that show the reality just don't support what we think. Oh, a wall is going to stop all this crime because when you look at who's actually committing crime, it's not them. And I mean, it's just yes, some of them commit crimes. They should be punished. But to have this be a $25 billion priority in hour one of day one is just
was also is not realistic in any
ridiculous.
sense of the word in any way.
And I hope the first debate's September 26th. Like these are things you hope Hillary Clinton is in debate prep doing.
Right.
Saying, okay, if Donald Trump says this, how do you combat it with
do you
a
counter?
fact that's a soundbite worthy that
But
can
that's the
rebut that?
problem
She's not very
is
good
that
at sound. She's not very good at sound
sound bites suck. People have to.
I'm saying that, but
read
something
a
that's
study,
quick-
read
that's
a
something that's quick.
paragraph,
Right, but-
people.
Yes,
But
but I'm
people
saying
need
in the
something
debate,
quick.
something
Yes.
she needs a quick rebuttal to everything that he says.
Because you can't have long
How are you going to
things.
pay for that? I'm going to pay for this. Okay, well here's the actual facts. And she's a policy wonk. She gets she understands the nitty gritty, and she just needs to be able to push that back. And I say that for any candidate. If Gary Johnson was up there, if Jill Stein was up on the debate stage, any candidate would need, because Chris Wallace said the other day that he is not going to be the person who's going to be trying to fact check
Call
them,
people out
call
when
people
they
out
say
when they
things.
say
Right.
so. So the candidate has to do a better job. Hillary Clinton will have to do a better job of fact checking
But
Donald
how
Trump on
about
the spot.
simple things like he says, the welfare is going to go down and that illegal immigrants
Yes,
using
the-
Medicare and
the
they
benefits
don't
and
get
they
all
don't,
this
I
stuff
know.
already. So it's just.
I mean, he doesn't need to know how that would actually happen. He just says that these things are going to
that
happen.
Hillary
Gets
would
the
let
Caesar
them
gun.
have
gets people riled
Obamacare.
up.
Hillary says if they can pay for a plan, they can buy it.
Right.
Okay.
She
That's not
wants
giving
you
it to them
buy
for
into the
free.
plan.
And it also helps everyone if people are
Right.
buying into it.
If you're not going to
Cost
buy
down.
it, if you're not going to buy it because the Republican
Right.
governor has not expanded healthcare in that state, then obviously somebody's going to have to pay for that, or your premiums are never going to go down.
Also in the chat room, Omat Ochan, who we always appreciate being with us, pointed out 78% of Americans don't believe that Mexico will pay for the wall. The fascinating part is the 22% who does believe it. Kimberly, also always in the chat room, says, one, Hillary is going to destroy Trump in the debates. And then also glad to see that she's preparing for it. According to Trump, he's just going to wing it. He may say that, but he knows there's a lot of prep going
Isn't
into
that
there.
what Roger Ailes is for?
Yeah, Roger Ailes.
He's now paying $20 million.
Roger Ailes will have a wig on, and he will look just like Stephen
20
Helmkamp.
million.
Yeah, did you hear about the settlement with Fox News?
Yeah.
$20 million to
Gretchen
Gretchen.
Gretchen Carlson, 20 million.
Yeah.
Today,
Yeah.
Wow.
Which, this is completely off topic,
No,
but
but-
I noticed that.
Well, it's about as
that Greta,
off topic as the Wiener story.
That was on topic because, well, here's the thing. It's on topic in the
It
sense
is.
that someone from Fox News is now a part of
Working
the
with
Trump
Trump.
campaign. But I heard
$20
that.
million settlement. That's a big.
Did you
I
guys hear that
do it,
Greta
but-
Van Susteren
She's
stepped
leaving.
down today?
Yep.
And I know it's very sexist to say. Do you think she's just upset that she didn't get sexually harassed? But anyway, no need to answer that. But Trump, as part of his speech, and we'll move on from Trump in a moment. There's a bigger fish to fry. He said he would create a new special deportation task force that's going to focus on tracking those criminals that Chelsea mentioned.
But by the way,
I
tracking.
almost called you Hillary, and you would have had every right to throw that glass of water in my face. I'm sorry. But anyway,
But this tracking of this, like the
Yeah.
biometric, that was already in a plan that the
Yes.
Senate had passed in 2013 that was
Right.
killed in the House,
Yes.
which in 2013 was controlled by Republicans. So what the
And the
freak,
sanctuary
people?
city thing that he
Sure.
talks about too. That was
But-
Congress lows that, and they're Republicans too.
To be
take away
fair,
the tax.
that's the House's job, regardless of which party's in power. The Senate does something, the House says no, and then it just goes
well,
back
no, but I
and
was
forth,
saying
and they all
like
keep
both
their
of them
jobs,
having
yeah.
both Congress has been loath to cut taxes from sanctuary cities, so it's not even, and that's Republicans controlling. that's
yeah,
happening,
yeah.
so.
My favorite thing about Trump's speech in Arizona, and I'll let you get to your point in a second, Drexel, is that Alabama Senator Jeff Sessions and Rudy Giuliani were both there wearing "Make Mexico Great Again" hats.
Oh yes, is that because Donald Trump tried to pose this as a win-win? They're
I
gonna
think he
love it.
did.
We're gonna love it.
My only
Yeah.
concern is I guarantee those hats were made in China. Anyway, what were you going to say, Drexel?
Well, I mean, obviously, we're talking about the 10-point plan is something that we've talked about before in terms of you can go to donaldjtrump.com. You can kind of see this is stuff that he's had on his website before. So this is nothing new.
Yeah, I've seen it
He's
on
just
there.
out there saying it just a little bit.
I wonder why
more
didn't he do?
dangerously.
He did like a 5-point plan in Mexico and then like a 10-point plan here.
Yeah,
It's the
wrote
exchange
it.
rate.
They
actually.
wrote it.
It's a bad exchange rate. Yeah.
Exchange rate. I think, and I tweeted this out right after the speech. I said, I felt the speech was more dangerous than any speech Iran's president Ahmadinejad had ever given.
Whoa.
And
yeah, I can see
I think that right after that, David Duke came out and said that he loved the speech. So I think that's what the American people really need to kind of understand is on policy. The policy is dangerous. You can dislike.
It's not even a policy. It's like an
An
ignorant
idea.
attitude
Yes.
approach.
Right. It's
And
the most
well, I mean, if we're
crazy
gonna-
thing in like 60 years of any major.
Right, but I say
candidate for a political
from a
party
fair standpoint. If you're
Thank
gonna
you for
compare,
trying to be
if
fair,
you're- if
'cause
you're
I'm
gonna
just not
if you're
on the-
gonna
I'm
if you're gonna
just
compare the
livid.
Clinton policy or even the Jill Stein policy, which we talked about last week, which is a little
it's
bit
very
more,
thin.
which is a
I
little
was
bit
gonna-
thin,
yeah,
but
policy.
it is humane. And then you look at the Donald Trump the Donald Trump policy, and if we're going to compare policy, at the end of the day, Donald Trump's policy does not embody the American spirit.
And he's trying to say that this is because we don't care about the Mexicans now. We want Americans first. But Americans are going to be hurt by this. I don't think that they have thought
And
this
his
through.
businesses.
And the business, but the thing I don't understand is why would he double down on a policy that's not a winning policy? That's the
Because
thing.
that is the
He's
policy that
trying
got
to-
him to where
It's
he
Right,
illegal
but
immigration.
it's a very narrow group of people that he already has their support. So if he's trying to broaden his appeal,
Well,
he's
yes,
going
that
the
was the criticism
complete
afterwards, for
opposite
sure.
direction. It makes no sense.
I think there was a couple of spots in the speech that I thought were really like crazy to me where he said
Gotta have a country.
where he said
Oh, yeah, I had
it's our right as a sovereign nation to choose immigrants that we think are the likeliest to thrive and flourish here. And then he also said something about choosing people based on
oh yeah, he wants an
yes,
ideological
an ideological-
certification.
yeah.
I do remember that.
What
yes.
is this?
I mean, I understand. I don't want people coming here thinking that they can, do honor killings. okay, that's, I mean, maybe a little pamphlet on our law.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's basically saying for his crowd that, you know, we're not going to let people who are going to try and enact
Can I
Sharia
just say
law.
that Omot just said this combo is too sane because Steven's not here,
Yeah, I
and,
know.
I'm not yelling at him
No,
on the table
nobody's
right
having the
now.
extreme.
I mean, I reached out to Stephen. I
She
tried to
did
ask
try,
him
yeah.
because I wanted to bring
Wanted
in
his voice to be heard,
perspective.
but instead, just the face of Hillary as
Representing Stephen.
Because
Yeah.
I literally, I mean, I was trying to find, I was like, looking on Breitbart, looking at the other side to see
I was
what
too.
are these people thinking that this makes any sense. And the only thing is that they've blown out these like criminal, you know, the violence and
Sure.
the murder
Right.
numbers way out of proportion, that people are scared. And I guess, yeah, but some of these criminal aliens are not even going to be stopped by a southern border. They came from elsewhere. So how many of those are we sending to Mexico that came from like Russia? I don't know.
Once again, he doesn't have to figure out how
one
to
of
do
the other
that. But
things
what was your other point on that, Drexel?
I was just going to say one of the other points that he had was a zero tolerance for criminal aliens, which was also to reinstate Kate's law, ensuring criminal aliens convicted of illegal reentry receive strong mandatory minimum sentences. But if the Trump campaign is wanting to deport criminals out of the country, what are our mandatory minimums for in the first place? Like what legal system do they think they fall under if they want to deport them? So I think that those are the holes. Like I always said, there's more holes in every Trump plan than an 18-hole golf course.
How do we? There's 23 holes in his plan. All 23 countries that refuse to take back their criminals.
Oh, that was a gun segue. I like that.
Thank
That was
you.
good.
That's very true.
I don't know how he plans to impose, you know, his desires on these other countries.
We want everybody to let us know how they think he's going to do it. If you're in the chat room now, let us know, or
In the
you
chat
can tweet
room,
at
you know, if you want to
TrumpHillary16.
say what Stephen would probably say, bring it on,
please.
because
Yeah,
I'm
he
having
should-
a hard time putting myself in
We're a
Stephen's
storage
position.
yard resident. Come on, what would Stephen say to all this?
WWSD. What would Stephen do?
What would Stephen do? Obviously, we should move on to another topic that was a big topic. And that topic was indeed trending yesterday. Hashtag hacking Hillary. For good reason. Now, obviously, there are a lot of conspiracy theories that go along with things like this. But I think that when something like this happens, there are very real concerns. And we're going to play more of it than probably people in here want to see. So we'll be here for an hour. No. It'll be under 2 minutes. But
No
I think
way.
it's very important to see how it goes and how
Drexel's gonna fall asleep.
No. He's got Hillary to keep him
keep
entertained.
me comforted.
So Stephen in the booth, if we could hear Hillary yesterday in Cleveland, a speech for Labor Day.
Congresswoman Marcia Fudge for hosting us.
Yeah, Marcia Fudge would make me cough too if I had to say that in public. Look at her already. I mean, for those that aren't watching and are just listening, all right, well, she'll get the water, and you figure, okay, great, everything's going to be fine. Uh-oh. Yeah, you have been talking a lot, Hillary.
Oh, God, right into the mic.
Yeah, just like in case you didn't catch it.
Every time I think about Trump, I get allergic.
Okay, good line.
Yes.
Good line.
Good.
She's used it like 4 times since then, but it was still a good line in the moment. And she goes back to the glass of water. Oh no, Hillary, come on.
But what makes it worse?
We have 63 days to
Listen
go.
to her when she's got her throat quote unquote clear.
Here's the thing though. Before every campaign, every rally that I've gone to, Hillary Clinton rally, somebody always comes out and puts a lozenge underneath her podium.
Well, she eventually
Where was
goes
the
to,
lozenge?
No, she eventually gets it in this one.
I think it was too late.
Yeah.
But the reason for this coughing fit, the pollen, that makes it worse.
The fact that they said it was
Yes.
pollen, yes. I
Because
think
they
they could
said
just
it-
say she's tired. But
Well-
you don't want to say she's tired because look what that did to Maggie Thatcher. The idea that she looked tired.
Especially
So-
when one of these fits was on a plane.
Yeah, well, that's a different one. So,
Same
and
excuse.
Stephen, you can turn it down, but there's more that you can see at C-SPAN. So, because when I originally saw it, it was a website that seemed a little crazy, and I'm like, all right, I feel like, pun intended, I feel like they trumped up the coughing and they added some in, and it's edited in a weird way. And I'm like, oh no, that's on C-SPAN. She coughed for basically 2 minutes.
Yeah.
So. I need to ask Team Hillary, not Hillary here, but Are you at all concerned that, not any of the conspiracy theories that she has some secret illness that she's trying to hide, but that, and I'll start with you, Scott, that this is taking a little bit more of a toll on her than she thought it would?
Silence.
Yeah, no, I was like, because she had a coughing fit. That happens to anyone.
Because she had a coughing hit. I'm sorry, before
No,
I go to
I'm just
Drexel,
saying,
we have a montage, a second video of other times where this has happened. And this isn't even all of them. We won't play the whole thing. But, Stephen, let's just see some of those. And I thought this one, it was because she didn't like the question she was being asked in a TV interview.
She looks very young there.
She does.
Yeah, I think this is 2008.
This,
Oh, this
Yeah.
is 2008.
Yeah.
I was reading
She
in the
coughs the
paper
same way.
yesterday, and this is what happens.
And
when
it just
you
seemed
block
like
campaign.
It's good to know her coughing doesn't age.
it's like a fine wine.
Yes.
Excuse me, waiter, could we get some Hillary Clinton cough? All right, here's another one.
Especially
Looks a little
in
older here.
science,
That's-
technology, engineering, and math.
Uh-oh, math.
So
She's
this
allergic to
knowledge
math.
Aren't we all, though?
is
Yeah,
exactly
amen to that.
And I've been talking all day, so excuse me.
And it's always a glass of water. And I will point out, one of the conspiracy theories is that she refuses
So we've come a
bottles
long
of
way in a
water.
short period
She always needs that glass of water. And the question becomes, what is in that glass of water? I believe it's water, but you never know. There could be some lemon in there.
Vodka. She needs vodka.
Yes,
Hey.
exactly.
During the debate with Trump, that glass should be filled with vodka. Anyway, so just a couple other instances. So it's not one time that she coughs.
I know,
There have
but
been
it's
hearings where
nothing.
she coughs, where I felt like she was buying herself time for to come up with an answer, and she's like, "Excuse me, I'm going to cough for a minute." But Drexel, what do you think? Is it much ado about nothing? As funny as it is to have all these videos of Hillary coughing, do you feel like there's nothing here?
I don't even know if that's a question.
I know,
T.
it's
Michael,
so
by the way,
silly.
T. Michael Rodriguez says coughing doesn't age. I'm dead. So whenever we get that kind of thing,
I think that that we should be focused more on some actual policy issues.
I mean,
it's nothing.
we
You know,
are.
I say that quite often, but we went through 2 weeks of is this person's health records coming out, and this person, and you're like, okay. Let's talk about this immigration speech that just
The
came
only
out,
reason
or-
I think it's fair to talk about her health is because I think it is serious that we talk about his mental health.
Sure, because apparently
So I'm
his
trying to
physical
be fair
health,
here.
his
Right.
physical health was claimed to be
Right, but-
that of a
but even-
rhinoceros or
but
something.
even-
I
And
forget
we
here's
found
the
out
thing.
that that was all a huge joke.
But here's the thing: at the same time that every time that Hillary Clinton is asked about Donald Trump's health, she always says, "I believe his doctor." She always turns
Sure,
it back
right.
and says, "I'm not gonna." She doesn't get caught up in this like, "Hey, I'm gonna get caught up in this name calling." She even said it today in a rally, like, "I'm not getting caught up in this name calling stuff." So and I think that's what we're gonna see in the debates, and that's why it's gonna be really nasty. But at the same time, we got to get back to we just saw Donald Trump in Mexico, disaster there. We just saw Donald Trump immigration speech, dangerous speech there. We saw him talk about foreign policy today. We'll see him talk about foreign policy tomorrow. It's gonna be probably just as dangerous. We see him talk about taxes all the time. We see him talk about the economy, and he's not talking about infrastructure. He's not talking about LGBT rights. He's not talking about criminal justice. He's not talking about women's rights. So at the end of the day, Donald Trump isn't talking about anything but Hillary Clinton coughing or Hillary Clinton
and
emails.
the wall.
Because there's
He's
and the
also
wall, because
talking
there's
about the
no
wall.
policy
Wouldn't that be
substance
funny if
coming
the
out of the
wall,
Republican
like,
side.
she coughed it down?
like,
I love that idea. That's,
yes.
Yeah.
See,
coughed
somebody
it right
needs
down.
to write that.
But that's the thing, there's-
Storage Yard resident. What if Hillary is really sick and just gets sicker? See, these are the kind of
Oh,
questions
my
that we
God.
needed you in there, Storage Yard
I mean,
resident.
seriously,
what if
there's
she gets
nothing-
sicker?
But
But
and,
if-
and
there's
I say
nothing
that-
to it. There's
and I
nothing
said
to
I
any of
wish
that.
there was, and I say this for the Republican Party. I wish Paul Ryan. Where has he been? First of all, I know he's been on vacation. I know the Congress has been on
He doesn't
vacation.
want anywhere to be.
But I'm
he
saying
doesn't
they've been on
want to be anywhere near this.
vacation, and even the Republicans who are running for Congress, like they're not even talking policy anymore. They're not even talking. They're not even like filling the gaps. They need to fill the gaps in.
Yeah,
that
because
Donald
this
Trump
is a
doesn't-
distraction, and that's
Right.
what it is.
And
There's
so,
nothing behind it.
where Democrats are out there flying around the country, Bernie Sanders was in and had a rally on Monday. Tim Kaine had, Joe Biden was out.
Chelsea just shed a tear when
I
you said
did.
Bernie Sanders. I saw it. You had to fight it back. Her eyes are a little plastic.
He said Bernie Sanders. What is he going to say about Bernie? But Democrats are running around the country actually talking about issues, and at the end of the day, Republicans continue to talk about the same thing over every time we get an email dump.
Because they have nothing else
Well,
to
here's the thing.
talk about. That's
and
why.
I say this to everybody watching too.
They don't.
Every time an email dump comes out, Republicans are more and more disappointed about
Yeah.
what comes out in those emails because nothing comes
Right,
out in
there's
the email.
nothing to talk
You're
about.
like, oh, okay,
All
so
right,
you said that.
Let me ask
That's why
a
they're
more
focusing
general
on
question.
things
We only have
like
a few
that.
minutes, but I want to ask a more general question. The fact that Republicans aren't talking about issues, specifically the Trump campaign's not talking about issues, couldn't that work if you think of the outlook of the voting electorate right now? It went from 8 minutes to 6 minutes. What happened to 7?
we're
I'm
7.
kidding.
Where's Lucky
Teasing-
7?
Teasing you, Stephen. I
Lucky
know
7.
you can't stay there on it. But I don't know. Just a sort of a yes or no, because I do want to move on to other things. Scott, do you think it could work if you just like, I don't want to get bogged down in the issues. I just want to say what sounds crazy.
Yes, of course, because it's a great distraction in the way society is now, and like watching, reality shows. Great, of course, it's a great distraction because they have nothing else to go on with policy. So let's distract by creating silly things that aren't real.
If they can't fit in 140 characters, it's not worth talking about. That is going to be the Republican mantra from here on out.
I kind of agree to some extent. Because you can have a link to HillaryClinton.com or DonaldJTrump.com. Something I wanted to make sure that we talk to Chelsea about. Donald Trump has a new deputy campaign manager, conservative activist David Bossie. Now, maybe not everybody knows who David Bossie is.
Is it funny
you
that
not
I
know
call
right now?
him the godfather of super PACs?
Go ahead and Google him,
PACs,
because not
yes.
only is he the godfather of super PACs, he hates the Clintons. And he's also the head of a little organization called Citizens United. What do you think about him being on board the Trump train?
Well, I appreciate this teachable moment to
Happy to share.
remind people or tell people about Citizens United. So Citizens United is this conservative group, and they did a Hillary
Hillary the movie, yeah.
And there was a question about fair airtime, that kind of thing, and so it went all the way up to the Supreme Court and led to, even though it had nothing to do with the immediate situation, the judges asked the parties to brief them on the larger issue of whether corporations are people. This is what the case that decided corporations are people, and they have the right to free speech, and money is speech. And so this is what created super PACs, because as long as the money wasn't all going straight to the candidates, it can flood into our politics. And so that's what really created the monstrosities of these super PACs. So it's very interesting for Donald Trump to hire this guy, because he was such a, I'm not with the big money, nobody owns me, I don't believe in taking money from these super PACs. And now he is, chummy with the godfather of super PACs. And his whole job is to come up with things to say about Hillary Clinton, which is something that apparently he's been doing for like 20 years. That's his job.
Yeah.
If you just a brief Google search of what he's done and what he's, how much he is, well, the opposite of in the bag. He's like anti-Clinton family, not just Hillary,
and
not just Bill.
He's so offensive that even like Papa Bush said like he's the scum,
distanced himself
and
from-
told little Bush, send messages to our supporters not to do anything with this
right.
guy, not to send him any money or support him. So if you've got Papa and Baby Bush
Yeah,
saying
no, he
boo
goes
on
all the
this
way
guy,
back
then
to
we know
he
it's
worked on he worked with someone who did the infamous Willie Horton ad from 1988, which
but I mean, it just goes to show the type of people that Trump has in his inner
he's got
circle.
Steve Bannon,
Are
he's got
these-
Dave Bossie.
Right.
Paul
Are these the
Manafort.
type of people that
Yeah.
you would think you'd want your president to be surrounding himself by?
So
That's,
when he says he surrounds himself with great
Right.
people, if this isn't in any indication, then we're in for a rough time.
And I think the other part of that is, this happened last week sometime.
Yeah.
And we have not heard a peep. Not from the media, not from the Clinton campaign, not from progressives, not from anybody who's like Chelsea, who's like all talking about Citizens United all the time. Like, where are these groups pointing out the fact, even on air, saying, look at who Donald Trump just hired? Like, where are these people
Yeah,
at?
this
they
is
need to
a
bring that up.
big
It's a
freaking deal.
big
And
deal.
you're right. This is the first time that I read about
Until
it
you
because I
emailed
searched.
it, I did not even have a clue.
I heard about it, but you're right. I mean, it has not been out and it has not been talked about on the other side.
Right before working on the campaign, he was the head guy at Make America Number One,
And the
a
crooked Hillary
super PAC.
PAC,
And it's legal technically for him to jump ship this
Sure it
way,
is.
this
Right,
fast.
absolutely.
But if he tries to go back, there would have to be 120 days waiting period, which somebody
Trump's
else has
first
already.
100 days. That's what he's going to wait for. Yeah.
So I think that's a big deal. I think people.
No,
should.
it is a big
Huge
deal.
I'm
and
glad
It needs to be
talking
talked
about
about more. It really
Yeah.
does.
Well, because we're running low on time, we're going to jump right into the polls. Now, the Real Clear Politics poll average has Hillary Clinton up by 4. 46.1 to 42.1, including the four-way RCP average that has her up 3.4. Now, Rasmussen has Trump up +1 in a four-way.
That's a very Republican trending poll.
The CNN poll has Trump up by 2, which, maybe it's good for their ratings to say that, but I do feel like that's not the only poll that I've seen.
Their sample size was also very small.
Sure.
They had 732 people compared
what
to
an odd number.
Yeah, compared to
technically it's an even number, but you know what I mean.
to the SurveyMonkey NBC poll that had 32,000.
Every time somebody says SurveyMonkey, I'm like, are they serious with SurveyMonkey?
I mean, that's a 5 to 6 point spread
so
for
here's
Hillary.
the thing, though. I mean, it's whatever. It does seem to be tighter than just last week.
It's
close.
definitely tightening.
It's a lot closer than people, I think, expected. You know.
And what it should be.
I think that's one way to look at it.
I agree.
The way that Stephen Helmkamp thinks it should be, it is much too close. But I do think, and we've said it before, that
Hillary
the debates
is now up 1 in Texas.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. There's some weird polls out there.
That's a crazy poll.
There's a lot of noise.
There's a lot of time for that. But thank you for sharing that with us, Kimberly.
Yeah.
So I think that the debates are really going to make a huge difference.
But at the same time, first of all, the CNN poll that came out today also said that they believe, or that 74% of the electorate would be white voters.
Right.
Like
74%.
74% of voters would be. You're like,
that number. Yeah, that's right.
That number is like crazy.
So Mexicans are just going to sit at home.
Black
after
folks
this?
are not going to vote. Asian Americans aren't going to vote. Like where? Okay.
And also that number's too high.
So that's why I looked at that poll and I was like, oh, that's a little weird.
And it's a very small sample.
But as we saw in a New York Times article.
Yeah, we didn't have time to get to it, but there's a New York Times article that you guys and girls can research. Well, maybe we'll get to it next week. It's called "Young Blacks Voice Skepticism on Hillary Clinton, worrying Democrats," and there's just some quotes in there that it's like, they're like, I hate him, but I don't trust her. What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, I feel
And I think that is not necessarily specific to any individual communities. I do think that that's a very real concern a lot of people have.
No, there are.
Chelsea included.
And you brought it up earlier about the undecideds. There's about 20% undecideds, which is much higher than in previous elections. 10%. Usually it's 5 to 10%. So you have that. But at the same time, he still has a huge mountain to climb as far as we go back to math.
And I
mean, he really does. 65%, he has to get a white vote, which hasn't happened since Reagan's 84 landslide. He has to get 47% of the Latin vote. He's at 19, and that was before the immigration speech last week. So math is not on his side, just looking at math and demographics.
And at the same time, I read that article and I talked about it in the show that I do before this show. I think Hillary Clinton, she's got a really strong ground game. Whatever Robbie Mook is doing, I think what's going to happen is that people are going to look at these polls and they're going to be shocked and awed come election day, because they're going to be like, well, that's not what it looked like. You see these big rallies, and the same thing. It's going to be the Democratic primary effect. You wonder how this happened, and you forget that the Clinton campaign ground game is so strong that this is what they're doing.
Well, also go back to Obama and Romney in 2012, when Romney was so convinced he was going to win, and then Fox News was great watching the battleground states. Every single one of them went to Obama. And it was all said and done.
And Clinton is up in these battleground states, and she's winning states. She's leading or tied in states that she shouldn't normally be tied in. So I think that that this 50-state strategy that Bernie Sanders has really pushed the Democrats to want to do has kind of spread the Clinton campaign across the country. So where we're thinking that she should be up in certain polls, she's actually up in every state that she really shouldn't be
like Georgia,
up in, like Georgia,
Arizona,
and Missouri, and stuff like that.
Right.
So what we're seeing is the 50-state strategy.
I just fear that he will win the popular vote and lose the Electoral College.
I mean, it's entirely possible that he could win more votes overall from all these.
That would.
But I don't see.
I mean, I feel like it's happened in recent memory where someone won the popular vote and did not win the Electoral College. So you see, it can happen, and we can move past it. But what we have to move past is the clock, because we ran out of time again.
I love this conversation.
Even without Stephen here, we still ran out of time. I thought he slowed us down. But
he blamed us last time for talking too much.
That's true. And he's like, we didn't get to Clinton cash.
We actually talked about more substance in this.
2 weeks in a row. Our Clinton cash watch is now up to 2 weeks. We still haven't talked about it.
The suspense.
Let's just keep it going. Let's just keep that going.
Find us on Twitter at TrumpHillary16. 16. And as I said earlier, you subscribe on iTunes and make sure you rate and comment. For Chelsea Galicia, at Chelsea Galicia, Scott Moore, at SMan80, Drexel Heard, at Drexel Heard. I'm Christian Bladt, at Christian DMZ, and we will see you next Tuesday, 7 Pacific. 10 Eastern.
What?
He won't see you, but Stephen will. And you know what? This will be you next week.
This will be me.
Yes, that'll be you.
We will see you
Keep
next
right here.
Tuesday, 7 Pacific, 10 Eastern. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.